If you're just getting into shooting, you're going to quickly learn that there's a plethora, tons of targets out there that you can use during your training and practice. And a lot of people will start off with paper targets just like you see here, and then graduate to different types of targets. And in this video, I want to share the go-to targets we use over and over in our classes and in our own practice. All right, welcome back. This is Myles at Tactical Hyve, and as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about the targets that we use over and over and over again. When starting out, you're probably going to be using a lot of these paper targets, and a lot of them are designed specifically to test specific skill sets, work on specific mechanics. You might have a 6-inch circle like this, which you can staple or spray glue onto a backer of some kind. You might have really big paper targets with multiple shapes and things on that target, which again will test different things. You might have small circles to test accuracy. You might have bigger circles to test recoil management. The list goes on and on. There's really no shortage of paper targets out there. And we have our own foundational set of paper targets that we use. And if you guys are interested, you can just go to our website and there will be a notification to download 9 free targets. And there'll be paper targets just like this with instructions on how to use them. But after you reach a certain skill level, these are going to basically go out the window, or you might go back to them when you're reviewing fundamentals. When you graduate, you're probably going to be using a lot of the targets that I have here in the back, and I want to talk about them because a lot of people are preoccupied with always using fancy targets, but the truth is, after a certain level, you possibly don't need them, especially when you're aware of what you're doing. You can spot if you're doing things wrong, and especially when your mechanics are pretty much above average, you can utilize a lot of the targets I have in my back. So I'm going to talk about each one, some of the benefits to them, and you might consider them in the future. So I'm going to start off with these 2 paper targets right here in front. And you'll see all of these targets a lot in our videos, and there's a reason why. First, the paper targets, they're just, they're all over. I mean, you can buy these on the web, lots of different brands, but they're essentially the same. And these are great because they have defined target zones, which can hold you accountable, and also they can serve as backers for paper targets. So if you wanted to use those paper targets that I talked about earlier, staple them on there, you can. So these are, these are very versatile. But let's talk about these 2 specifically first. So this is an IPSC target, okay? IPSC is an International Competitive Shooting Association, and it's a different design here than a USPSA target, which is an American Competitive Shooting Association. The designs are different, but they both have scoring zones, which again will hold you accountable. So for example, the USPSA target here has an A zone, a C zone, a D zone, and an A zone here in the head box. So if you wanted to hold yourself to a certain accountability standard, you're not shooting the whole silhouette, you're trying to maybe hit center mass here, or maybe a headshot. Similarly, this IPSC target has different defined zones here, A, C, and a D, different shapes. And the reason why we like to use both is because we have to adjust for the different types of shapes. Now, yes, they are not human silhouettes, and at times we will use human silhouettes as well, but with human silhouettes, they're usually those paper targets which you need a big cardboard backer and then you have to staple them. These are just easier to handle, which is why you see us using them a lot. They're just simple, and again, they're all over. You don't need to carry the paper, which the wind can blow away, things like that, okay? And if you're in the competitive shooting space, these are the exact targets you're going to shoot, so you're working on the exact targets you're going to deal with in a competition. Another reason why we use these targets is that, see the bullet holes here, with typical paper targets, well, the paper target is ruined. But with these targets, you can get a paster gun just like this or pasters, and when you're done shooting it up, all you do is just tape them up and then you're good to go. So that next repetitions, you know exactly where your shots have gone, right? So it's very convenient and again, relatively cheap, cost effective, and reusable if you keep on taping them. And the third reason why we like to use these paper targets is that paper doesn't lie. What that means is your shots are going to create holes here, and they're going to tell you a story, where you need to improve, what mistakes were you making, or what you did well. Here, when I was doing the demo, I didn't really like these shots. I was just kind of rushing it, but this tells me a story. I was rushing it, maybe not paying attention where my red dot was. I just let these shots fly. So paper holds you accountable because you know exactly where your shots are. The downside is it doesn't give you instant feedback, right? Because if you were shooting from far away, you don't really know where you hit unless you're very good at calling your shots. But this is where all the steel targets that I have behind me come into play. So when we want instant feedback, we use a lot of steel targets, and you can see a lot of different types, a lot of different size plates here. We have poppers, we have our regular BC steel in the back, and they're all for different purposes, but notice we have them all because we like to combine them. And if we're working specific skill sets, then we'll hone in on specific things. So all of our steel targets are from Shoot Steel. These are the ones we like and recommend. They really do pay attention to little detail, so you might want to check them out in the description below. When it comes to steel plates, we like to use setups like this, where we can change the height. We just buy, go to the hardware store and buy different pieces of wood here, different heights, but right now they're all the same height. And you'll notice that we have some small steel plates versus ones that are a little bit bigger, and that's all by design. Now, I do recommend, if you guys are going to be shooting targets like this or using stands like this, you do want to highly recommend adding some kind of barrier to save your wood. Because there's a lot of, this is a hard target, and if you're shooting it from very far or you have beginners, they're going to shoot up that wood and the stand is going to break. So this comes in handy as well. This is actually the same material. This is AR500 steel, which is going to take a lot of damage. And this is from Shoot Steel as well. And the beauty of this setup is, if you hit the steel target, this is going to make a different sound from this. This is just going to protect the wood, right? And that's going to be useful, particularly if you're shooting difficult targets, as I mentioned, or if you're a beginner. The reason why we have lots of these targets is because it forces you to do level changes, as well as changes the difficulty of the target. So when we talk about the throttle control drill, you can watch the top 3 drills that I like. I talked about it, how depending on the difficulty of the target, it will dictate how fast you shoot. And this is what does it. The more you have a variation, the more you're relying on your true abilities, and you can't kind of game things, especially if you're going fast. It's going to really force you to work, right? And kind of dig into that subconscious, so to speak, of your skill set. Before we move on to the next target, we want to thank Vedder Holsters for bringing you today's video. They are a great concealed carry holster company made in the USA. We use them a lot in our Force and Force classes, and they take a lot of damage in our Force and Force classes. You can imagine we go through hundreds of students, and they really are durable and reliable. So if you're looking for a good concealed carry holster, make sure to check them out in the description below. Another type of steel target we like to use are these pepper poppers. There are 2 different types, and there are pros and cons, and there are use cases. So this one is your standard one, and we have them in different sizes. I just brought one of the smaller ones out here. And this is typically used for competitive shooting, but we still like to use this even for defensive shooting because it changes the degree, the difficulty of the target, and again, the size of the target. So any kind of variation is going to help. The more targets that we use, it kind of varies things up, keeps things fresh. This specific type of target is mainly for competitive shooting in the sense that it will attach to a swinger, which is another target that we like to use as well. And when you shoot this steel plate, it will activate the swinger. It'll activate a moving target, which is, again, another target that we like to use. Now, if you're not into the competitive shooting space and you're not going to be using a swinger, then you might want to pick up something like this. I use these a ton. The very fact is, because I'm lazy, when this gets shot down, I don't like going back to set it back up. So this, you just drive into the ground or hammer it down, and it's spring loaded right here, so it will take that force from the shot, and this acts just like a normal popper. There's different sizes as well. The whole point is we're changing up the targets we're using, varying it up, and this is a great option for you if you do want to shoot something that is going to force you to change your level to the ground. When you are working on shooting, it is very important to shoot targets that are at different levels. Again, this is going to force you to really hone in on your skills, use your vision. Whereas if you're shooting everything on the same plane, then you might find yourself kind of on autopilot sometimes. Whereas shooting different types of targets, different levels, will force you to be more aware. This is another steel target that you see a lot in our videos. We like to use this specific shape because this is kind of the acceptable hit zone even on paper. It is not a full-size silhouette, so it holds you to a higher standard. And we like these types of target versus paper because, again, different use cases. If I place this at, let's say, 25 yards and I want to have instant feedback, this is better to use than, let's say, paper. Now, we will do both. We'll do paper as well and steel, but there are times where you don't want to walk down range every single time, and this comes in handy. When it comes to these types of targets, because these usually take a lot of damage, people will be shooting them with rifles. And again, going back to kind of why we protect the wood with some AR500 steel, we want to do the same thing with these stands. You may at your outdoor range or ranges you go to, you may see lots of stands shot up. We recommend that if you guys are going to be shooting this type of steel target, particularly at distance where shots can veer, you get really good stands. And these are made of AR500 as well. So if these are shot up, okay, these stands are shot up, it's the same material here. So it can take that hit. It's not going to break. It's basically going to last forever. And it's really sturdy here. So any type of steel target you use, you want to make sure that you're protecting the stand as much as possible, or else you're going to have to go to Home Depot, Lowe's all the time and get new wood. It's just a hassle. So investing in good quality targets is a must if you're shooting steel. So these are the targets we use a lot during our own practice, and you'll see us use these in our classes as well. This doesn't mean these are the only targets we use, but I would say, me personally, I would say 85% of the time I'm using these targets. Paper targets will keep you honest, and these are relatively cheap. You can find them everywhere. You can reuse them as long as you tape them. Steel targets, make sure you're getting different types for the different applications you're using them for, but ensure that they're high quality because you don't want that steel to break down, and also the stands as well. And of course, the paper targets. Everyone starts out there. And again, if you do want some of the paper targets that we use, just go to our website and you'll see a notification to download some of those targets for free. Anyway, this is for those of you who are asking about the targets we use. Hope you guys liked the video. Let us know if there are certain targets you really like to use in the comment section below. And don't forget to subscribe. See you guys next time.